Nobody was supposed to find it. It was buried so deep inside the background noise of the universe that most scanning systems would have ignored it completely. It looked like static. It looked like nothing. Just a faint, repeating pattern hiding inside the oldest radiation in existence, the kind of radiation left over from the very first moments after the universe was born. But one machine caught it. One machine, running on a small research station orbiting a cold blue star at the edge of the Verith home system, flagged it at 3:14 in the morning when no one was watching. By the time senior scientist Daravel arrived at the station the next day, the machine had been running calculations for 6 hours straight. The screen was full of numbers. And at the top of the screen, in simple text, the machine had printed one word. Artificial. Daravel sat down slowly. She read the word again. Then she called her team. Within a week, 17 of the best minds in the Verith Science Council were crowded into that small research station. They brought better equipment. Bigger machines. More powerful translation tools. They worked without sleeping, taking shifts so the analysis never stopped. The signal was real. That much was clear immediately. No natural force in the universe produces a repeating pattern that precise. No star, no black hole, no cosmic collision makes something that clean and deliberate. Someone had built this signal with great care. Someone had put it exactly where it would be hardest to find, wrapped inside the background radiation of the universe like a letter hidden inside a wall. The first question was obvious. How old is it? The answer came back on a Tuesday morning, and it stopped the entire room cold. The signal was older than any known civilization. Older than most stars. It had been sitting in the background radiation of the universe for so long that the very concept of time barely applied to it anymore. Whatever sent this signal did so before the Verith existed. Before almost anything existed. Daravel looked at the number on the screen for a long time. Then she said, quietly, to no one in particular, someone was thinking a very long time before any of us were born. No one laughed. It did not feel like a joke. Decoding it took 3 more weeks. The signal had layers. The outer layer was almost easy, a simple mathematical pattern, the kind any intelligent species would eventually learn to recognize. Prime numbers. Geometric sequences. Things that say, this is not an accident. We made this on purpose. We are intelligent. Keep going. Most signals found in space stop there. A greeting. A proof of existence. Nothing more. This one did not stop. Past the outer layer there was another one. Denser. More complex. It took 9 days and 4 different translation systems working together to crack it. This second layer was a map of sorts, a guide to reading the third layer, which was buried even deeper. It was like someone had left a key to a door, and behind that door was another door, and they had left that key too. Why? Daravel thought about it constantly. Why make it so hard to open? If you want someone to find your message, you make it easy. Unless you do not actually want just anyone to find it. Unless you want only someone patient enough, smart enough, and careful enough to get through. Unless the message inside is not meant for everyone. The third layer opened on a quiet afternoon when the research station was half empty. 3 scientists were present. Daravel, a young physicist named Soren, and an old translation specialist named Grek who had spent 40 years decoding dead languages from collapsed civilizations. The screen filled with text slowly, line by line, as the machine finished its work. It was written in a format they had never seen before. But the translation system handled it. Grek later said it felt like the message had been written to be translated, like whoever wrote it already knew what tools would be used to read it, thousands of years in the future. The text was short. 3 paragraphs. Simple, direct, and written with a calm that felt almost frightening given what it said. Daravel read it once. Then again. Then a third time, very slowly, as if going faster might change the words. The message said many things. It described a species. It described their history, their nature, their capability. It described what they had survived. What they had built. What they were capable of building next. It did not use words like dangerous or violent. It used words that were quieter than that, and somehow much worse. Words like relentless. Words like inevitable. And then, at the very end, in the final line of the oldest message ever found in the universe, written by a hand no one living could name. Do not wake the humans. The room was completely silent. Greg reached forward and put his hand over the power switch of the decoding machine. He did not turn it off. He just held his hand there, like some part of him still believed that was an option. Soren spoke first. His voice was very quiet. Where did the signal come from? He asked. Daravel already had the star map open on the second screen. Her hand was not shaking. But her voice, when she answered, came out barely above a whisper. There, she said. And she pointed. A small, quiet planet. Blue and green. Sitting alone near the edge of the galaxy like it had been waiting there for a very long time. A planet with no idea that the entire universe had just been warned about it. The message spread faster than anyone could stop it. That was the first mistake. The moment the decoding machine finished its work, the signal had already been picked up by the relay stations. 40 of them at first. Then 200. Then 4,000, spread across every corner of the known galaxy like lights turning on one by one in a dark room. Every species with a receiver caught it. Every government, every science council, every military station that was listening that day received the same 3 paragraphs. And the same final line. Do not wake the humans. Within 48 hours, the emergency calls began. Within 72 hours, a council was being assembled. Not a small one. Not a regional meeting between neighboring systems. A full gathering, the kind that had only happened twice before in recorded history. Once when a dying star threatened 6 inhabited systems. Once when a plague moved across 3 galaxies and no one knew how to stop it. This was the 3rd time. And this time, the threat had a name. The council chamber was built inside a hollow moon orbiting a neutral planet. It was chosen specifically because it belonged to no one. Neutral ground. The kind of place where species who did not trust each other could at least sit in the same room without reaching for weapons. 41 species sent representatives. Some came in ships that took weeks to arrive. Some sent holograms because the journey was too far. A few sent machines to speak on their behalf because they did not trust the air in the room to be safe for their biology. But they all came. Daravel was there. She had not slept properly since that afternoon in the research station. She sat near the back of the chamber and watched the room fill up, and she thought about that final line again, the way she had been thinking about it every hour for the past 3 days. Do not wake the humans. She had one question that would not leave her alone. What exactly had they already done to deserve that warning? The first speaker was a historian. Not a soldier. Not a politician. A historian, an old Drell scholar named Vashu, whose people had been keeping records for longer than most species had been alive. The Drell did not look impressive. They were small and slow-moving and spoke in a voice like wind through dry leaves. But when Vashu began to speak, the room went quiet immediately. Because Vashu had records that no one else had. He pulled up the first image, a cave painting on a dead planet in a system that had been silent for over 1 million years. The painting showed a 2-legged figure standing at the center of a great ruin. Around it, everything was broken and burned and collapsed. But the figure itself was standing completely straight. Hands at its sides. Head up. Not like something that had survived a disaster. Like something that had caused one. And did not regret it. Vashu let the image sit on the screen for a long moment before he spoke. We have always called this figure the Builder, he said. In our oldest stories, it appears at the end of things. Not to destroy. Not out of cruelty. But because it builds, and building sometimes means tearing down what was there before. He moved to the next image. And the next. Cave paintings from 6 different dead worlds, all showing the same two-legged shape. All found in systems that had gone completely silent thousands of years ago. Someone in the room said what everyone was thinking. Are those humans? Vashu looked at the images for a moment. We do not know, he said honestly. We only know that wherever we find these paintings, we find ruins. And we find no survivors to ask. The second record was worse. A military historian from the Sen Collective pulled up transmission logs from a system called Varith 6, a prosperous civilization that had gone silent approximately 200,000 years ago. The last 30 transmissions from Varith 6 were on record. Most were normal, trade reports, weather data, routine communications. But the last one was different. 3 words. Sent on a wide broadcast so that every neighboring system would receive it. They are learning. Then nothing. No more transmissions. No distress signal. No explanation. Just silence, the kind that had never ended. The room was very quiet when the historian finished. Someone near the front asked the obvious question, did humans destroy Varith 6? The historian shook his head slowly. We have no evidence of that, he said. We have no evidence of anything. That is the problem. When Varith 6 went silent, there was nothing left to examine. Not ruins. Not debris. Not even dust arranged the wrong way. Just an empty system where a civilization used to be. He paused. Whatever happened there, it was total. It was Sorith who asked the question that changed the direction of the entire meeting. She was young for a council representative. Her species, the island, aged slowly, but even by their standards she was considered new. She had not spoken yet. She had been sitting near the side wall with a small data screen on her knee, reading quietly while others talked. But when she spoke, everyone turned. You keep asking if humans are dangerous, she said. Her voice was calm and even. That is the wrong question. The room waited. The right question, Sorith said, setting her data screen down, is whether they are awake yet. Nobody answered. Because nobody knew. And then, before anyone could speak, a new signal came in. From Earth. Humans had received the rebroadcast. And they were asking, in a simple and direct transmission sent outward into the galaxy with no fear at all. Who sent this message? And what does it mean? The transmission from Earth sat on the main screen of the council chamber like a stone dropped into still water. Nobody moved. It was such a simple message. 11 words. No demands. No threats. No carefully chosen diplomatic language designed to impress or intimidate. Just an honest question, asked in the same direct way a child asks why the sky is dark at night. Who sent this message? And what does it mean? That was what made it frightening. Not the words themselves. But the tone behind them. Calm. Curious. Completely unaware that 41 species were sitting in a hollow moon right now, in the most serious emergency council in 300 years, specifically because of them. Humanity had no idea. And somehow, that was the most unsettling thing in the room. Daravel watched the representatives around her. Some were whispering to their assistants. Some were pulling up data on their screens. One representative from a large military species called the Gothan had already placed both hands flat on the table in front of him, the way his kind did when they were deciding whether a situation required force. She hoped he would decide it did not. The debate began immediately and it was not calm. The Gothan representative spoke first. He was large, gray-skinned, and had the kind of voice that did not ask for attention, it simply took it. We close the channel, he said. We do not respond. We go silent and we stay silent. If they do not know we are here, they cannot come looking. Several representatives nodded. Several others shook their heads. A smaller species called the Mura spoke next. Their representative was barely visible behind the council table, but her voice carried clearly. Going silent did not help Varith 6, she said. We do not know that Varith 6 had any contact with humans at all. Silence may mean nothing to them. Or it may look like an invitation. An invitation to what? The Gothan said. We do not know, the Mura representative replied. And that is exactly the problem. The argument went in circles for 2 hours. Block the signal. Answer the signal. Destroy Earth before anything else happens. Send a probe first. Send nothing. The room could not agree because nobody had enough information, and getting more information meant getting closer to the one thing they were all afraid of. Daravel sat through all of it without speaking. She was waiting. Because she knew Sorith had more to say, and she had a feeling that what Sorith knew was going to matter more than anything the military minds in the room were offering. When the debate finally slowed, Sorith stood up. She did not wait to be called on. She just stood, and the room let her speak, because something about the way she moved made people pay attention. I want to show you something, she said. She connected her data screen to the main display. A series of records appeared, not ancient cave paintings this time. Not transmissions from dead civilizations. These were recent. Clean. Carefully organized over a long period of time. I have been watching Earth for 200 years, Sorith said simply. The room stirred. Watching a developing species without their knowledge was not illegal. But it was considered uncomfortable. Like reading someone's private letters. I started watching because my people were curious, she continued. We thought humans were interesting. A young species. Loud. Busy. Always moving, always building, always fighting each other over small pieces of land. She paused. We expected them to collapse. Every model we had said they would not survive their own development. Too aggressive. Too divided. Too many weapons pointed at each other. She brought up the first piece of footage. An aerial view of a vast gray wasteland, a continent scorched flat, nothing living visible for hundreds of miles. This happened 400 years ago, she said. A war. One of their largest. When it ended, a full quarter of their northern landmass was uninhabitable. Poisoned soil. Poisoned water. Species extinction across the affected regions. By every standard we use to measure civilizational survival, they should have entered a decline period lasting at least 2,000 years. She moved to the next image. The same region. But different. Green. Rebuilt. Alive. That was taken 80 years later, Sorith said quietly. She moved through image after image. A coastline swallowed by rising water, rebuilt on higher ground. A city destroyed by a natural disaster, reconstructed larger than before. A disease that spread across the entire planet, defeated in less than 2 years. 14 times, she said. By our count, 14 separate events occurred in recorded human history that should have ended their civilization. Famine. War. Climate collapse. Biological catastrophe. She looked around the room. 14 times they came back. And each time they came back faster. Each time they came back stronger. Each time they seemed to understand something new about how not to make the same mistake again. She turned off the display. We did not underestimate humans because we lacked information, she said. We underestimated them because we did not want to believe what the information was telling us. The room was completely still. They were never going to collapse, Sorith said. We were just hoping they would. The silence that followed lasted a long time. It was broken by a soft chime from the communications panel. A second message from Earth had arrived. Still calm. Still direct. But this time, the tone was slightly different. Still no anger. Still no fear. But there was something new in it now. Humans had done what humans always do when they do not get an answer. They had started looking for one themselves. The message said, "We have begun analyzing the signal in full. We believe there is a second layer. We are working on decoding it now." Daravel closed her eyes. They were already pulling the thread. The council made its decision just before dawn on the third day. Not a unanimous one. The Gothan representative voted against it twice and made sure everyone knew it. 3 other species abstained, which in council language meant they did not agree but did not want to be responsible for what happened next. The Mura representative stared at the floor during the final vote like she was trying to find a crack in it to disappear into. But the decision passed. They would send someone to Earth. 1 representative. 1 meeting. 1 human. No armies behind the door. No weapons on the table. Just a conversation, the kind that either changes everything or ends everything, and nobody in the room was entirely sure which one this would be. They chose Soreth. Not because she was the most powerful representative in the room. Not because her species had the largest fleet or the most political influence. They chose her because she had spent 200 years watching Earth from a distance, and that made her the only one in the room who had any idea what she was walking into. Soreth accepted without hesitation. She did not look afraid. She looked, if anything, like someone who had been waiting a long time for a door to finally open. The landing site was chosen carefully. A wide, flat field outside a small city in a region humans called the Eastern Coast. Green grass. Open sky. Far enough from the city that there would be no crowds, but close enough that help could arrive quickly if something went wrong. Soreth stepped out of her ship alone. The air hit her first. Warm. Heavy with the smell of living things, grass and soil and something sweet she could not name. She had read about Earth's atmosphere in hundreds of reports, but reading about a thing and standing inside it were very different experiences. She took one slow breath and reminded herself to focus. A single figure was walking across the field toward her. Dr. Yara Osei was not what Soreth expected. She had studied human body language for years, and she knew what fear looked like on a human face. She had seen it in old footage of disasters and conflicts, the wide eyes, the tight jaw, the shoulders pulled inward like the body was trying to make itself smaller. Dr. Osei had none of that. She walked across the grass with her hands in her coat pockets and her chin up, and when she got close enough for Soreth to see her face clearly, what she found there was not fear at all. It was curiosity. Pure, open, unguarded curiosity. The same expression Soreth had seen on human children in old footage, that specific look of someone who has just found something interesting and wants to understand it completely. Dr. Osei stopped a few steps away. She looked at Soreth carefully, the way a scientist looks at something new. Then she said, in a calm and friendly voice, "You are a long way from home." They sat in the grass because neither of them suggested anything else. Soreth explained everything. She started from the beginning, the signal, the decoding, the council, the records of dead civilizations and cave paintings and the 3 words from Verith 6. She spoke slowly, in the simple trade language that Earth had been transmitting in its own outgoing messages for decades, proof that humans had always expected this conversation would happen someday and had been quietly preparing for it. Dr. Osei listened without interrupting. Not once. Not even when Soreth described the 14 lost civilizations. Not even when she explained that the galaxy had been aware of Earth for a very long time and had made a deliberate choice to stay hidden. Not even when Soreth said, as gently as she could, that some members of the council had seriously discussed the possibility of preventing humanity from ever reaching the stars. Dr. Osei just listened. Her face stayed calm and open. Occasionally she nodded slowly, like pieces of something she had already been thinking about were finally falling into place. When Soreth finished, the field was quiet for a moment. Just the wind moving through the grass. Just the sound of a living planet going about its business underneath them. Then Dr. Osei asked her question. Why do you assume the warning was about protecting you from us? Soreth paused. Because the message describes humans as. I know what it describes, Dr. Osei said quietly. Not rudely. Just precisely. I have read it. We decoded the first layer 6 hours after we received the rebroadcast. She looked at Soreth steadily. What I am asking is different. The message warns you not to wake us. But what if it was written to protect us? What if something out there is dangerous to humans, and whoever wrote that signal was trying to make sure we were not disturbed before we were ready to face it? Soreth opened her mouth. Then closed it. She had no answer. Because in 3 days of council meetings and debates and arguments and vote counts, that question had never once been asked. She looked at this human sitting in the grass with her coat pockets full and her chin up and her eyes completely calm, and she felt something she had not expected to feel. She felt like she had been thinking about this entire situation from the wrong direction. Soreth returned to the council ship before sunset. She did not say much when she boarded. She walked straight to the analysis room, sat down at the main terminal, and pulled up the original signal. Not the decoded version. The raw original, every layer, every frequency, exactly as the machine had first found it. She started from the very beginning. And on the 4th hour, in a layer so deep that the original scanning team had marked it as interference and moved past it without a second look, she found something. Text. Clean and deliberate and unmistakable. A second message. Hidden inside the first one like a room built inside a wall. Her hands moved slowly across the terminal as the translation system worked. The words came up one by one. And when the last word appeared on the screen, Soreth sat back in her chair and stared at it for a very long time. Because the second message was not written in any ancient language they had ever seen. It was written in a language that had only existed for 300 years. It was written in human. The council did not sleep that night. Not because they were told to stay awake. Not because anyone called an emergency session or sounded an alarm. They simply could not sleep, because the thing Soreth had found sat in every mind like a fire that would not go down no matter how much quiet you threw at it. A second message. Hidden inside the first one. Written in human. The implications of that were so large that most of the representatives could not look at them directly. They circled around the edges of the idea instead, the way you walk around something very hot without touching it, trying to understand its shape without getting burned. If the message was written in a human language that had only existed for 300 years, then whoever wrote it had done so recently. But the signal itself was billions of years old. The outer layers were ancient beyond any measure of time the council used in normal conversation. So either someone had reached back through billions of years of history and planted a message inside a signal that already existed. Or the humans of the future had done it themselves. Both possibilities were enormous. One of them was terrifying. The other one was somehow worse. By morning, the council chamber was full again. Nobody had officially called the meeting. People had simply started arriving, one by one, until every seat was taken and several representatives were standing along the walls. Soreth stood at the front with the translated second message on the main screen behind her, and she waited for the room to settle before she spoke. It did not fully settle. But she spoke anyway. The second message is short, she said. Shorter than the first. But I want you to read it carefully, because every word in it matters. She turned and read it aloud, slowly, in the trade language so every species in the room could follow. We know you found this. We intended for you to find it. Do not be afraid of what comes next. The humans you are watching are not ready yet, but they are close. When they ask to join you, say yes. The alternative is that they find their own way in. And that takes longer for everyone. Sent from the 31st century, Earth calendar. The room was absolutely silent. Then three things happened at once. The Godhan representative stood up so fast his chair fell backward. A small delegation near the east wall began speaking rapidly in their own language, too fast for the translation system to keep up. And a junior communications officer near the door turned from her panel and raised her hand carefully, the way someone raises their hand when they have bad news and are trying to decide how to deliver it gently. Soreth looked at the communications officer. "What is it?" The officer lowered her hand. "Earth has sent another transmission," she said. "A longer one this time." The transmission was not a question this time. It was a document. 41 pages, formatted cleanly, written in the same trade language that Earth had been quietly studying and practicing for decades. Soreth read the first page and felt something move in her chest that she did not have an immediate word for. It was a proposal. Not a demand. Not an ultimatum. Not the kind of message a species sends when it wants to show strength or establish dominance. It was a careful, thoughtful, well-researched proposal for formal contact between Earth and the Galactic Council. It outlined what humanity was offering. It outlined what humanity was asking for. It acknowledged openly that there were probably things humans did not yet understand about galactic politics and culture, and it said plainly that humanity was willing to learn. The last paragraph of the first page said simply, "We have been alone for our entire history. We would like to stop being alone. We think you would too." Soreth set the document down on the table. Around her, the debate exploded. The Godhan was still standing. His argument was the same one he had been making for 3 days. This was exactly how it begins, exactly how something gets inside your walls. You let it in through a door you opened yourself, and then one day you look around and the door is gone and so are the walls. He was not wrong, technically. He was just missing something important. The Mura representative said what Soreth was thinking. "The future version of humanity already told us what happens if we say no," she said, her small voice cutting cleanly through the noise. "They find their own way in. That means they find a way regardless of what we decide today. We are not choosing between letting them in and keeping them out." She paused. "We are choosing how this begins." The room got quieter. Soreth looked at the document on the table. 41 pages. Patient. Honest. Asking, not taking. She thought about Dr. Osei sitting in the grass with her hands in her coat pockets, asking the one question nobody else had thought to ask. She thought about 14 events that should have ended humanity and did not. She thought about a signal billions of years old with a message written inside it that could only have been placed there by people who had not been born yet, people who were so certain of what their species would eventually become that they reached back through the entire length of time to leave a note. Not a threat. A note. She picked up the document and stood. "I am calling the vote," she said. The room went still. Protests died before they reached anyone's lips. Even the Godhan sat down slowly, the way someone sits when they know the moment has already passed them. Soreth looked around the room at 41 species who had spent 3 days afraid of a signal, afraid of a species, afraid of a future they could not control. "All in favor of opening formal contact with Earth," she said. Every hand went up. Every screen lit up. Every hologram raised the equivalent of a hand. Even the machines that spoke for the species too far away to attend in person registered their votes within seconds. For the first time in the history of the Galactic Council, a vote was unanimous. Not one abstention. Not one refusal. Not even the Godhan, who raised his hand last, slowly, with the expression of someone who has just decided to trust something bigger than his fear. Soreth exhaled. Then the communications officer spoke again from her station by the door. Her voice was careful. Controlled. But underneath it was something that Soreth recognized immediately as the early edge of alarm. "There is a new signal," the officer said. "It is not from Earth." She paused. "It is not from any known species." The room turned toward the main screen. The signal was already being displayed, a pattern unlike anything in the database. Coming from a direction no ship had ever traveled. Aimed, with absolute precision, at a single point in the galaxy. Earth. Soreth stared at the screen. She thought about the second message again. The one written in human. The one that said, when they ask to join you, say yes. The alternative is that they find their own way in. And that takes longer for everyone. Longer for everyone. She had assumed that meant longer for the Council. Longer for the species already out here, already organized, already part of something larger. But standing here now, watching an unknown signal move toward a planet that had just been voted into the galactic family, she understood it differently. Longer for everyone meant there was something else out there. Something that had also been waiting. Something that had been watching not just humanity, but the entire galaxy, waiting to see what choice would be made today. And now it had its answer. The unknown signal did not stop. It moved at a speed that should not have been possible. Not faster than light in the way the Council's ships moved, carefully, controlled, following the known rules of travel that every species had spent centuries mapping and studying and agreeing upon. This was different. This signal moved the way a thought moves. The way a decision moves. One moment it was far away. The next moment it was close. As if the distance between 2 points had simply stopped mattering to it. Every tracking system on every Council ship locked onto it immediately. Every analyst in every monitoring station began running calculations. Species that had been arguing 10 minutes ago were now sitting side by side at the same terminals, working together without being asked, because whatever this was, it was larger than any disagreement in the room. The signal was not aggressive. It carried no weapon signature. It did not behave like a missile or a probe or anything in the Council's extensive catalog of things to be afraid of. It behaved, if anything, like a message. Deliberate. Directed. Patient. But it was aimed at Earth. And it was getting closer. Soreth made a decision without calling a vote. She opened a direct channel to Earth. Not through the formal diplomatic relay that the Council used for official communications. A direct line, the kind that bypassed every layer of political process and landed straight on Dr. Osei's personal receiver, the contact details for which Soreth had quietly kept since their meeting in the grass 2 days ago. Dr. Osei answered in less than 30 seconds. She was indoors this time. Behind her, Soreth could see other people moving quickly across a large room full of screens and equipment. Earth had clearly been watching the same signal. Earth had clearly been doing what Earth always did. Working the problem. We see it, Dr. Osei said, before Soreth could speak. Do you know what it is? Soreth asked. Dr. Osei glanced back at the room behind her. Someone handed her a piece of paper and she read it quickly, her eyes moving fast across the page. Then she looked back at Soreth with an expression that was difficult to read. Not fear. Not excitement. Something in between, like a person standing at the edge of a very high place and deciding whether the view is worth it. We have a theory, she said carefully. But you are not going to like it. The theory took 11 minutes to explain. Dr. Osei walked Soreth through it step by step, with the patient clarity of someone who had spent her entire career making complicated things understandable to people who needed to act on them quickly. She pulled up data as she spoke, the signal's frequency, its pattern, its point of origin, which Earth's systems had managed to calculate by working backward through its trajectory. The point of origin was not a star system. It was not a planet or a station or anything built or inhabited. It was a region of space that the Council's own maps marked simply as empty. A vast stretch of nothing between two distant arms of the galaxy, so far from any inhabited system that no Council ship had ever traveled there. Not because the journey was impossible. Because there was no reason to go. Nothing was there. Except, apparently, something was. The pattern inside the signal, Dr. Osei said, matches a pattern we found inside the second message. The one written in human. She paused. Not a similar pattern. The exact same one. Character for character. Soreth felt the hair on the back of her neck rise. You are saying whoever sent this signal knew about the second message, Dr. Osei finished. Yes. She set the paper down. Or wrote it. The council chamber had gone very quiet by the time Soreth relayed this information. Not the quiet of confusion or fear. A different kind. The kind that settles over a room when something very large and very old has just become slightly less invisible, and everyone present is beginning to understand that the story they thought they were in is actually a much bigger story, and they are standing much closer to the beginning of it than the end. Vashu, the old Drell historian, spoke first. His voice was steady and dry and did not waver at all, which Soreth found remarkable given what he was about to say. There are records, he said slowly, in the oldest archives of my people. Not history, older than history. Stories passed down so many times that most scholars consider them symbolic rather than literal. He folded his small hands on the table in front of him. They describe a presence. Not a species. Not a civilization. A presence that has existed in this galaxy since before any of us. That watches. That waits. That does not interfere. He paused. In every version of every story, it only ever moves once. Only ever makes itself known once. Under one specific condition. The room waited. When something new enters the galaxy, Vashu said. Something it has not seen before. Something that changes the shape of what is possible. He looked at the main screen, where the unknown signal was still moving, still patient, still aimed at Earth. It comes to look. Nobody spoke for a long moment. Then the Gothan representative said, in a voice much quieter than anything he had produced in 3 days of meetings, it is not coming for us. No, Soreth said. It was never coming for us. He looked at the screen. It has been watching us for a long time and we were never interesting enough. He did not say it with bitterness. He said it with something closer to relief. The signal reached Earth at exactly the moment the Council's formal welcome message did. Both arrived at the same time, from opposite directions, landing on a small blue planet that had spent its entire existence sending questions outward into the dark and receiving nothing back. In the span of one afternoon, Earth received 2 answers. One from a galaxy that had been afraid of it. One from something so old it had watched the galaxy itself being born. Dr. Osei was standing outside when it happened. She had stepped away from the screens and the data and the noise because sometimes the most important moments deserve open sky above them rather than a ceiling. She stood in the same field where she had met Soreth 2 days ago, and she looked up, and she watched the light change in a way that had no scientific explanation and did not need one. Around the world, in every city and every village and every quiet place where a human being happened to be looking up at the right moment, the same thing happened. A soft shift in the quality of the light. A feeling, not heard but understood, the way you understand the mood of a room the moment you walk into it. Something very old had just noticed something new. And it approved. Dr. Osei stood in the grass and breathed the warm air and felt the weight of the whole long quiet history of her species settle around her like something finally put down after a very long carry. All the centuries of looking up and wondering. All the years of sending signals into the dark and hearing nothing back. All the generations of humans who had asked the same question and not lived long enough to hear the answer. She heard it now. Not in words. In the simple, enormous fact of no longer being alone. She put her hands in her coat pockets. She looked at the sky. And she smiled the way people smile when something they always believed in finally turns out to be true. Behind her, her communicator chimed. Soretha's voice came through clearly. Dr. Osei. The Council has completed the formal welcome. Earth is officially part of something larger now. A pause. How does it feel? Dr. Osei thought about it for a moment. Thought about cave paintings on dead worlds and signals buried in ancient radiation and a galaxy full of species who had spent thousands of years hiding from a planet that just wanted company. Honestly, she said. It feels like it took long enough. She heard Soreth laugh. A real laugh, surprised and warm and very slightly undignified, the kind that escapes before you can decide whether it is appropriate. Then Soreth's voice came back, quieter this time. There is one more thing, she said. The unknown signal, the one from deep space. It has sent a response. Not to us. Another pause. To Earth. Specifically to you, Dr. Osei. Your name is in the header. Dr. Osei looked up at the sky again. Of course it was. She reached for her communicator and said simply, send it through. Because that was what humans did. They always opened the next message.